we had 8 states and DC vote. In most cases it was presidential as well as some congressional and Senate races. So in the 7 states and DC all held presidential primaries. Joe Biden obviously carried all of those. He's the only candidate remaining in the race. So that's kind of a given. But what we were kind of watching for last night was whether or not he would get enough delegates to clinch the nomination. So he needs 1,991 delegates to get the nomination formally. He's incredibly close. It didn't happen last night, so he's probably a few dozen delegates away from doing that. And that could be next week. It'll be very soon. Bernie Sanders did get a few delegates, a pretty negligible amount, but that's more people that'll be at the convention for him that can vote on the party's rules and their platform. So, that's a success for him considering he's not actively campaigning. He's suspended his campaign. Voting is a patchwork, across states and cities and counties and localities. So, I don't think there's a one size fits all where we can say turnout was great, turnout was poor. So I think overall what we're seeing is in-person voting was pretty light yesterday. And I think that's, just a holdover from reservations about going out in the public during the coronavirus pandemic. What we've seen though is in states that really pushed absentee voting and mail-in voting, turnout was surprisingly strong. So I think about Iowa, for instance. Iowa, who is, it's a Republican-controlled state, sent mail-in ballot application forms to all its registered voters, and it really seemed to pay off. They set record primary turnout yesterday. And in states like New Mexico, in-person turnout, very, very light, but saw a massive increase in mail-in ballots received. So I think out of the 400,000 or so total votes cast, about 250,000 of those were mail-in votes. So substantial increase over the 2016 primaries. I think in 2016, it was probably between 20 and 30,000 absentee ballots. So, people are really getting on board with mail-in voting right now. And I think it's not something that you're seeing in, democratically controlled states. And it's not something that you're seeing just in Republican controlled states. It's really across the board, state officials are pushing this, and in a lot of cases it's paying off. So Donald Trump has seized on this over the past couple months, essentially making the argument that mail-in voting increases the risk of voter fraud, and that it kind of hands a systemic advantage, a structural advantage to Democrats. I want to point out there's no evidence to those claims. We've had all these conversations about expanding mail-in voting, possibly sending absentee ballot applications to all voters. States are trying to put a lot of measures in place to prepare for an election that's conducted largely by mail. That being said, it seems across the board, voting rights advocates, legal experts, all say that there still needs to be the option to vote in person.
And your question and questions that we've asked too, we asked the same way. So how comfortable do you feel? Very comfortable, somewhat, not too comfortable, not at all uncomfortable, or it could be somewhat uncomfortable. And the interesting thing is that in your analysis and many analysis we've done, people have collapsed the very comfortable and somewhat comfortable categories or say this many people are comfortable. But I think behaviorally, there's going to be a significant difference between people who are very comfortable and whether they're going back and people who are somewhat comfortable. So I imagine people who feel somewhat comfortable will be, heading to the grocery store, perhaps, maybe even going to, a quick caffeine fix at Starbucks at, a pickup window, but they may not be rushing back to sit down to do a 2-hour-long meal at a restaurant if they're only feeling somewhat comfortable. And that's the thing that I think is going to be be worked out is, again, how comfortable actually are people, and what does that how does it translate into actual behavior? It's going to take a lot longer than I think people think for people to be really ready to re-engage in their old lives.